you doing, David?
Gentlemen, get in there.
Yeah. Yeah, so why don't we just jump in and talk about, like, your work is definitely drawing based?
Yeah, tell us what is behind this installation that we have.
You know, I work almost completely intuitively, and I used to tell my students this just to tell them to relax a bit. I have never kept a sketchbook. I don't do preliminary work. If I think the idea out, then it's dead to me. So it's the adventure of just starting and having sort of an idea where it's going to go, or leave the final result open as much as possible. So, you know, looking at this show now, it's quite evident to me that this is a COVID show. But like, duh, I had never thought of it that way when I started. The earliest piece is that one, which would have been the summer of 2020, so right at the beginning of COVID, and the rest of the work has been done over the last, year and a half.
Is it like a tree that's fallen down?
Yeah.
Yes.
That blew down in the park across the street from where my house is, my studio is, and it was really curious to see what happened to the tree in terms of COVID, and then sort of an increased sensitivity to ecological concerns. It's an oak tree, and that park is full of apparently it's a somewhat rare in Toronto, the type of oaks that grow there.
Okay.
Anyways, oaks don't bend.
Right.
They break off.
Okay.
And I've watched any number of big, beautiful oak trees come crashing down in windstorms.
So much for the mighty oak.
Yeah, well, no, it's the whole thing about bend, don't break. Well, they do not. They do not.
Brittle.
And when they've got in full sail with their leaves, they snap right off. And this one came down, and I think the parks guy said something like 150 to 200 years old, and there this massive creature was lying on the ground, and in COVID, nobody's working, kids aren't at school. What do you do with the kids? And so they all came to the park. Forget about the swing set. Forget about soccer. Let's go play on the tree.
Go play on the tree for sure. Yeah.
And there's something happy about that, but there's something, to my mind, fundamentally. It's sort of fundamental to human nature to be dismissive of the tree.
Right. Almost disrespectful, eh?
Exactly.
Like if you think about it,
this
like,
is a massive creature.
When I walk around and I look at, especially the big oaks, it's like, this is an elder.
I sense a feeling of loss.
Yeah.
Not just because of the tree, but just the color, the arrangement on the paper, and this figure who is leaning in with a microphone. Are they interviewing?
Yes. The subtitle for this is the main title is "So how do you feel now?" Like classic dumbass CBC question.
Yeah.
Lost your family. Well, how do you feel now?
Yeah.
Well, how do you think I feel?
Yeah. Exactly.
But also how we were covering COVID.
Yes,
time,
exactly.
Right? Fantastic.
And so the subtitle is "So Interview with a Fallen Tree."
That's fantastic.
And then you got a little bit of the comic book stuff happening.
Well, I started thinking about it, and okay, if it's got a soul, what might its soul be? And there's kids all over it, and I wanted something otherworldly.
Combining all these different elements, pop, surrealism, atmosphere, expressionism, are you conscious of that at the time? Or
not in the way that you're defining it. No, it just seems to be me.
Yeah.
It's all the stuff that I've absorbed over the years. years, and different people come of age visually in different eras.
Right.
And so I was a kid through the 50s.
Right.
And so cartoons was like huge for me, and I still have a collection of so-called vintage cartoons,
Right,
you know.
right.
And so that stuff was real magic to me as a kid, and it still has magic to me
So
now.
that's interesting, because you would have been educated through the, like the late modernist, minimalism.
Well, so good point, Charles. Grew up in Toronto, went to a jock high school, so the arts were not.
Right,
You
yeah,
know,
that-
in fact, if you're interested in arts, you're put in the opportunity class. I'm not kidding.
Right, I think I saw you East York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I went to OCA, I wanted to be a high realist.
Okay.
Because that's what I thought I wanted to
right,
be, you know. And I studied old masters right from the get-go.
So you were in the fine art department.
Yeah, so ink tempera, oil tempera, and
Yeah.
all of that. But I also knew enough that that wasn't all I wanted to do, and despite the organizational barriers, I forced my way into what at the time was called experimental arts.
Right,
And even
right.
then, I was bringing this stuff together. And, you know, for decades, it's interesting to think of your life in that way, not last one, but
You get to a point where
yeah. For decades, I worked on large sheets of plywood with really bright color.
Okay.
You know, marine enamels. The paint was called Impervo. I kept thinking I have to write these guys. They get such a fabulous name. So Impervo paint, just buckets of paint,
Yes.
gouged, ripped, sanded, and then I would work with stencils to build the drawing element on top
I
of
think
it.
those are the paintings I'm remembering.
Yeah. Well, because you know what happened is you go through that traditional fine arts drawing is the basis of all. I was terrified of losing the drawing when I started to paint, and it would always slow me down. And then I discovered this stencil thing. Well, okay, I can keep this. I can keep the drawing.
Yeah.
I can replace the drawing. And so I developed this sort of fairly elaborate process of building a substrate, if you want to use that term, beating the bejeebers out of it, having 4 or 5 of them going at the same time, and I would lay a stencil down and put another stencil down, and now with spray paint.
Yeah.
And then I go back and beat it up and put this. I might spray the stencil 30 or 40 times
Oh, wow.
onto the image, and then go and discover the image with this. This is nonverbal for orbital sander.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Down to down.
Yeah, and go find it again.
Yeah.
And I did that for years, and while there was always a strong drawing element in it because I was cutting these stencils, most people didn't see it that way. They saw it as, in effect, probably close to non-representational painting,
Okay.
color, texture, and so on.
Right.
And at some point, you know, you do that long enough for decades, it gets, I'm tired of this. And somebody who wanted to use this vocabulary, and I kept looking, it's going to come out of my mouth, I decided to deconstruct. Sorry guys, you can shoot it up. Deconstruct my creative process, and I took the color out of it, I took the paint out of it, and I just decided to draw. And having drawn for years as a stencil, well, you have to consider both sides of the line, and you can't cut a circle out because then the stencil falls out on the floor. Straight up drawing again. This is really easy. This is
Well, and
really,
did you
really
find,
fun.
and did you find that it just, so, cause
Yes.
I like willow charcoal.
Yeah.
Straight to the paper,
Yeah.
and it's an instant,
Immediate.
it's like a turn on
Yes.
the ignition of the subconscious.
Yeah,
Just,
exactly.
it just happened.
Because, well, we are all probably comfortable enough with that process that we don't think about it as
Right,
a
yeah, I mean,
process.
obviously, it's the years of
You
training
know,
that.
but you don't even
Yeah,
think
you
about
don't
it,
think
and
about
so
it,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
it just
It's more direct.
exactly.
It's direct,
Sorry,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
correct.
It's a direct conduit,
Yeah.
neuroterms from the subconscious.
Yeah.
For me,
Onto the
yes,
paper,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a direct
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
And there's a certain back to basics kind of
Yeah.
experience from what you're describing.
Well, I had the privilege of being the coordinator of fine arts at Centennial College for a long time, and that meant that I was the gatekeeper of people coming into that program. And while there were some people that dealt with three-dimensional elements, most were looking at it, some sort of two-dimensional format, drawing, printmaking, painting, whatever. And I would say that most of the people that came in were natural drawers. Very few people were natural painters. And I think it's probably because, you know, when you're a kid, you're given a pencil.
And it's so basic, right?
Right, it's just basic, it's primal.
The alphabet, it's primal, as you
Yeah.
say. But you're taking drawing, and that's what got me excited about your show is, you know, you're taking it, I mean, still much of it is two-dimensional, but there's a feel of a third dimension that, like, you know, these things, you know.
Well, that's the
You know,
atmosphere and the
yeah.
lighting and the textures.
The way they're,
Yeah.
it's an installation, I guess that's why.
Well, you know,
that's it, it's an installation.
I think more and more about my artwork as installation pieces and as a whole, as opposed to individual artworks. And I think about them more as objects than pictures. So the materiality of it is really important.
Definitely, like this show, the space in between is as interesting and as important. I love the space in between.
You are absolutely.
And when you got the angles. Like,
you are absolutely right.
Energized,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you start to think about that, and you know, you spend a lot of time with yourself when you're in the studio, so you think whatever you think, and so the gap between becomes energized.
Yeah.
And it's hugely important as to how it enters into a dialogue with the object.
Well, it's a compositional issue, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
you're not
yes.
just composing what's
Yes.
on the work, but how the work's going to fit into a.
Can we just move to another part so we have a different background?
Sure. So this is one. I think this was one of the first works I saw online when I was when your work was first brought to my attention. The hands. Can you maybe?
By way of process, as you were talking about, this drawing started with this pair. I had not any idea that there'd be other
Just the
drawings.
two rectangular pieces of paper.
That there'd be other drawings, or that there certainly would be eyes. I had what? No. So I do the drawings, and by way of process, it's based on photographs that I take, and this is my hand, and this is my beautiful partner's hand. And I'll talk about the process and talk about the idea behind it in a bit. And it did that. It looked lonely.
Yeah, well, you know, it would be very different just for those 2 minutes.
I understand.
And so I needed something else. This piece behind me is called They Are Among Us. And I think within the realm of conspiracy theory, this is the darkest one. And it's the one that maybe is the most focused or focuses for me what the idea of the rest of the show about. It's based on a really repugnant white supremacist theory coming up out of the States. Had been on the fringes, but now becoming more and more mainstream, which is very disconcerting. And the theory is called, as I understand it, the Great Replacement Theory. And again, as I understand how this goes, cabal. It's repugnant on all levels. So it's anti-Semitic. A cabal of Jewish power brokers are manipulating political and cultural structures to systematically eliminate so-called white people from North America.
Yes,
We're all here together. Yeah. And so what I thought I would do is, okay, who's watching? Okay, and so the eyes appear.
That's where the eyes.
And they're animal eyes.
So it's this classic paranoia that somebody is always watching. And in terms of source material, that's my eye, and that's my partner's eye.
Okay.
And then
The rest look like animal eyes?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But so I do that, and it's still not working.
Okay, all right. So that
right,
was,
so,
yeah.
Okay,
I need more.
Yeah, I need more.
So you're building on,
We got to
yeah.
add this up. So then I went online and I looked up because of this handshake thing, I looked up the Mason's handshake. Now it's supposed to be super secret.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Google's got
Nowadays,
it, you know, the 47
everything is-
different steps.
Yeah.
And so I made up my own secret handshake. you're in this inner sanctum cabal, but in fact you're shaking hands with the other constantly.
Yeah.
Right. And so Sue and I invented our own handshake, and then because it started to go down and I couldn't put eyes at the top. Well, okay, where else can you put eyes? Well, I'll put them at the side. And do I want people eyes? And no, because I'm also very concerned about environment and our relationship to the earth proper. So these got to be animal eyes. And I've had a lot of fun with people coming in and trying to identify species. And to be honest, so I go along, I try to sense what answer they want to hear.
Yeah,
oh you
yeah.
nailed it, you nailed it. The only ones I can say with confidence is this is from my dog, and this is from my cat. Okay.
Oh, see, I was going to say that was a bird, but there you go.
And
You
you-
now, once you say it, it's like, okay,
You guys can identify
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like what
yeah.
you think is there.
Yeah.
I think Godzilla's in there somewhere, but
You know what? I like not knowing.
yeah, that's
You know
good.
what? Like sometimes I just like it's
Yeah.
better to just like their animal eyes or
Yeah.
their eyes.
And the whole idea, and this runs all the way through it, beginning with the tree interview with the fallen tree, is the relationship between us and the natural, or humankind.
Yeah,
and the natural
yeah,
is all
yeah.
is, I think, all through the show.
What strikes me about this, also with the fallen tree, there's a concept, there's a story, but there's also something really human
Yeah.
in it. I mean, these are tender connections, right? There's a tenderness here in the way the hands
Yeah.
interact. So that's
Well,
amazing.
I think it's important as much as you can not to deal with stereotypes, because that's
Right.
a reductive
Right.
a reductive process, and so
Yes.
as soon as you deal with something personal or intimate, hopefully if it makes a connection with the viewer,
Exactly.
that it's an expansive.
Yeah.
Just want to talk about like the colors and bands and stuff like that. They sort of suggest flags or
Exactly.
Okay.
And as much as I was thinking about anything,
Yeah.
I was thinking about sort of the political branding of this, and not trying to label anyone in particular, but just the whole idea of political organization, which is fraught with problems now. So flags.
Sure.
Right. I just see
And,
how
and nobody's flag.
I just seeing how that's like a little bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
The
of course.
cherry is a
Oh,
bomb. Yeah, beautiful.
well,
I love
You
the.
win, you lose.
The drawing has an interesting graphic quality. Like I almost thought they were photo.
Well, so I work with photographs, and I have thought a lot about that. At this point, I can draw right out of my head almost anything
Right.
that I want, and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's also in.
Right, yeah.
But I also use photographs very specifically in, I don't know, is this too much jargon? Like in a post-photographic or a post-digital way, where like we're so used to consuming imagery captured digitally and presented digitally, and invariably it's photographic,
Yeah.
and that's fine, and it's certainly a main part of our aesthetic right now. Then to take that and move it back
Right.
into a more traditional form, and really, to my mind, subvert it.
Yes. I see what you're
So I
saying.
mean, Mark, you're interested in that, the idea of drawing photographs,
Yeah,
as opposed to
copying a
drawing the
copy.
thing.
Yeah,
Because
You're
a photo
drawing.
is a snapshot of something. It's a copying of
Yes,
something out
yeah.
there. And if you're drawing the photo,
Yeah.
you're that much farther
Right.
removed from the original. But at the same time, you're commenting on the
Right.
process, on the copying process.
So going back to sources, like as a kid in the 50s, my parents, to the degree that they had visual engagement, would probably not have been from photographs. I mean, when was the first color magazine put out, or our grandparents?
yeah.
There was that whole thing about North America dissing the drawing in stained glass churches because all they saw were black and white photographs. They didn't realize there was color. You know, it's kind
Interesting.
of
Okay, interesting.
drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that experience of visuals was actually being present. You know, you're present in the forest. You're present talking to
Yes,
each other.
yes, yeah.
And it wasn't mediated through a photograph. But
That's
now
right.
everything we do
Yeah,
is so
yeah,
mediated
yeah.
through photographs that it seems to be. Well, it just seems to be natural to acknowledge it as part of the visual vocabulary that we all deal with, but now taking it back into.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
into my
You're making
own
it
idea.
graphic again.
Yeah,
You're making
yeah.
it hand drawn and all that.
Making it
That's
more
awesome.
Immediate.
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
Immediate,
yeah.
more
Love that.
direct.
Love that.
amazing.
Shall we go
Let's look
talk
at,
about another piece? I love this piece here with the hands.
The floating hand.
Yeah.
Floating hands, or they look like they're robot hands, or
Well, yeah,
which what is going to lead me to another question I have for you, which is your thoughts on AI art, which is all the rage these days.
Yeah, it is. Well, about this, I had, and I'll talk to you about AI, I did have
Yeah,
thoughts on that. About this, I had no idea that I was going to do anything with crowns. I had visualized this show, the work, I could see where it was going to
Right.
go. And then, of course, the queen dies.
Oh yes.
And you may gather that I am not a monarchist to the degree that the idea of any kind of political organization based on the Lucky Sperm Club
Yeah, yeah.
makes me really, really angry. Angry. So, and then there was they were bombarded. People were crying. The queen is a crown.
Well, there's that disconnect between what they actually do
Yeah.
and did and the fantasy. I remember years ago talking, I was aghast to discover a certain person was a monarchist. Just because of their cultural background, I just thought, like, how could you?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's fairy tales, it's kings and queens. I'm like, that's so there is that, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
mythology of.
Well, what I hear from people, Canadians, when they talk about the monarchy, it's just that it's always been there. So it's just who we are, and it's
Yeah.
And of course, it's just a sort of a non-thinking reaction or response.
Yeah.
And acceptance, as opposed to maybe we should really consider
reconsider
this.
Yeah.
This.
Dynamic. So, anyways,
Anyway.
But you put the crown in.
Yeah, well, so lots of discussions about crowns and whether Chuck was going to ascend to the crown,
Yes, yeah.
or does the crown descend on him.
Yes.
So I decided that everybody could have a crown. So like it's open to everybody. But-
Open season.
But these are nasty crowns.
Yeah, look at there's something there. Is it?
This is the crown of guilty abundance.
Okay.
So if you want to put it on your head and just consume avaricelessly, go for it. And then somebody said, well, no, they're not actually reaching for the crown. They're throwing it away, which I had never
Oh,
considered.
it does have that. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
maybe so.
Like it depends on how you look at it. Are they receiving it or are they throwing it up? And it could be either way. Yeah.
There is an ambivalence.
Yeah.
Or
The way it's floating,
Yeah.
like there's no weight to it, so you don't know if it's just ending or flying up. That's
But to me, that's Canada.
Yeah, right?
that's a good. Yeah.
We're kind of like, they're all dysfunctional, but they've always been there.
That's right.
Right?
And we should be more careful with the environment, but
Yeah.
let's drive over there.
That's right. I'm gonna fly to the conference and tell them that,
exactly.
right?
And talk to them about environmental control. It's like one time I was have a family cottage in Halliburton, and a guy came into the bay up to our dock with twin Mercury horsepowers on his boat, handing out flyers about environmental concern around.
Oh
the
my
lake.
God, eh?
So what is this, some sort of a performance? Like what?
I know, and they don't get
The more we
the.
talk about this,
Yeah.
the more I want to stand with there's an intentional ambivalence here.
Yeah.
Either it's being thrown away or caught, we don't know, and that's intentional because that is so classically what
Well, and
Canada's
just
like
I don't know
about
if this
monarchy.
is intentional, but there's that shape that looks like or maybe it is the the old bird mask.
The
from
plague mask.
Plague
It
mask.
looked
Yeah.
a bit like a plague
Yeah.
mask. It looked a bit like.
Well, there's definitely a penile element there.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
there's
okay.
the word dickhead comes to
Oh,
mind.
okay.
If
There you
if
go.
put that
All right.
crown on,
Okay,
you
good,
get
good,
it.
good.
I was also thinking of a gas.
No, it's no holes
No,
barred.
it's all of the above,
No
right?
holes barred.
Yeah. All of the above.
Some more crowns.
Oh yeah. So this is I like this.
Oh my
this
God, I
crown.
love the drawing here.
This is I send this out to every politician. This is the crown of plausible deniability.
I see.
And that guy's just screaming into the phone. That's me, of course, screaming into the phone, saying, "No, I didn't say that." Right. It's also so my very conscious homage to Francis Bacon, who was one of my big.
Oh yes, yes,
Well,
the
it's-
shape of the shape of the room.
Yes,
oh yeah,
exactly,
yeah. Oh, that's.
exactly, and maybe a bit of.
I love that. See, I do that
Yeah.
with my drawings
Yeah.
too. These little things
Just a
they
little
sneak
bit.
in.
And it means something to me.
Yeah.
you know,
This
really.
one. I want to know, who are we looking at here? This fellow?
Well, a lot of people have identified that as John A. MacDonald.
Okay.
And the thing that is really interesting about that, well, I'm not going to argue with them about it. Let me tell you what the full title of this is first, and then I'll tell
Okay,
you
let's
who
hear
that image is based on.
Okay.
This is the crown of insatiable industry.
Mm.
And the subtitles, best title I've ever written, guys. Ready?
Yep.
Here you go. Little Larry had no idea of the enormity of the responsibility about to fall on him.
I see.
To some, that made him a hero. God, that's a title to live for.
That's
right?
a novel. Right?
Absolutely.
And so a lot of people see John A. MacDonald will know. If I mention these names to you, Mo Howard and Curly Howard, that's Larry Fine.
Excellent,
Okay.
excellent.
From
I
the
also
Three
thought of
Stooges.
I also thought of like a crazy Ronald McDonald.
I was thinking he looked like a stooge, but I didn't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
venture that
yeah.
guess in case it was someone
Yeah,
else
yeah.
or a McDonald.
I just,
But you know what? Maybe McDonald was a stooge.
well, see, exactly.
There you go.
Maybe Larry was channeling John A. Who knows? And this particular Larry I found at a garage sale where the guy had some puppets out, and I was just talking to the guy, like sometimes puppets are really creepy, and he said,
Yeah, yeah.
"Oh, you want to see creepy? I got something in my car, I don't want to even put it out, it's so gross." And he brought out 3 golf club covers from ages, like 50, 60 years ago, knitted socks with 3 Stooges heads on them. And the Stooges heads were molded, whatever it was they used,
yeah.
with some sort of
Yeah.
synthetic. And their expressions were so demonic. Like, they would, you know, Chucky,
Yeah.
they would have eaten Chucky for breakfast. No problem. No problem. So he's got like these little ratty teeth.
Yeah. So that's the puppet head or the
Yeah,
sock head
yeah.
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then so this is a combination of drawing and stencil.
Yeah.
And I like trying to work out the process of making an even playing field
Yeah.
for different materials or different
Yes,
processes
yeah.
and melding them together. So
Yeah.
same with all the crowns are stencil. So everywhere that there's a dark line, it would have been a drawing where I have cut that out
Yeah.
and then sprayed through it with, I just use rust inhibiting paint, as a matter of fact, because the colors are the most saturated. Trim clad, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then I love the way they're hung, just loose. I just all these sort of different ways to hang and this like I love.
Well, you know how it goes, guys. We've all been doing whatever we've been doing for as long as we have, and you start to wonder, like, why am I drawing in a rectangle?
Yeah. Right.
And although a lot of this is rectilinear, it's based on rectangle shape, you know.
Yeah.
Classic 22 by 30 sheets of paper. I try to
Right.
stretch it wherever I can. And then because it's paper, much more so than wood or canvas, you can tear it and manipulate it in a much more freely organic way than those other supports.
Yeah, and I've got a stack this high in my studio of drawings and paintings that I've cut
Right.
and torn, and sometimes I put them together, and sometimes I just tack them together
Yeah.
and then reuse them.
Yeah.
Now up here, these pieces up here are not on just paper, right? Is this some kind of a board?
Yeah, they're mounted on support at the back. A couple of considerations for that. One is, you know how a whole lot of things that become very fundamental to the experience of the artwork are almost always practical.
Yeah.
So if you pin this thing, for example, this is also mounted. If you pin this to the wall, it's a paper, and just like this paper here, the edges curl up, fold out, and all of that.
Yeah.
And for this, I really want the materiality of the paper to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
only pinned in a couple of spots.
Yeah.
But for these guys, it gets to be really disruptive of the visual experience, and so unless I put like 47 tacks around that.
No, I know what you're
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
So you mounted these on
I think this is on styrofoam.
styrofoam?
Okay.
Yeah, and it just holds them, and it also makes them more of an object.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I try
no,
to do
yeah.
with a lot of the drawings
Yeah.
is keep them as objects.
Yeah, but obviously it keeps their crispness, no folds, no bending. Obviously it had a practical purpose. I didn't realize they were mounted. I thought they might have actually been works on some kind of board.
Yeah, no, they're on paper, and this is my own conspiracy theory. This is again from a very early cartoon from the 30s, which was called Dancing on the Moon.
Yeah.
And so I've imagined that, yes, indeed,
Yeah.
there are robots up there right now doing,
Oh, yes,
doing
yes,
the
yes.
boogaloo.
Wonderful.
They were more empty than full of potential, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to add color. to
Right,
this.
yes, yeah.
And it, for no other reason, and again, a practical reason for knitting the whole thing together
Yeah.
better. And if you can imagine it without those, you'll see what I mean. It's
They would
stronger
look like
piece
three
of
separate
color.
pieces.
It is
Yeah.
stronger, and it gives it a little bit of pop.
Yeah,
You know, a little bit of accent.
yeah,
Yeah, no, you could see how it would just look like three X's,
yeah.
Yeah.
like side by side.
In one version, I had the words of the poem there,
Okay,
but it wasn't doing the poem or the drawing. It was too busy.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and it needed the sort of the openness of the color without drawing to make it work.
Yeah, those are the fine challenges. So I'm gonna ask a practical question.
Yeah, sure.
So if somebody buys a piece like this,
They're crazy.
they're crazy. It's probably a question that Mark would probably ask more than I would, but I'm curious about, well, I guess, do you sell these pieces, and if so, what's, like, that's always the biggest challenge
How are
of
they assembled in someone's
So, of course, I would love someone to have them. The ultimate compliment, and I have no objection to money. Money means more time in the studio.
Absolutely,
but,
yeah.
But I'm stupid enough to never consider the commercial merits of what I do, and so I don't expect anybody to buy this or any of these larger drawings. But if you want to just walk over here
Yeah.
for a second, I'll show you what I do.
I mean, they could be, shadow boxes with plexiglass or,
So for example, I make books
ah,
all the time, right?
This is what I was going to ask you
yeah.
off camera.
Mark and I have been publishing collaborative drawings.
Do you
Uh-huh.
have, if you have, we'll talk, you're
Yeah,
on camera?
yeah, yes.
All right.
Yeah, so I've got
Talk
copies
after.
of all this stuff.
Talk after.
And so I do that. Hold on for just a second.
You mean just because we're talking about what we do?
Well, 'cause I'm
Oh, look at this
fine.
one. Yeah, oh, look at this. Ooh.
So that's a digitally published
Look at this
book.
one.
God.
Look at that.
Oh my God. All right, I need
Well, I
to
can
buy
tell
a
you
few
about that.
copies here.
And so I do like different, this is an anthology. You know, this is not from this show. It's from
Okay,
a-
yes,
a
right. That was the
show.
previous show with the cars. Is that the one that had the
No.
cars? No, that was the one. That one was called "This Is Mine" or something. Yes.
that's
Okay.
right.
Yes.
And so these are the originals, this is 5 feet and this is 15 feet. And so now it's, I hope, in a format that, first of all, somebody can take home, and in a format.
So these are artist-made books as opposed to mass-produced.
I have a decent enough printer
Okay.
at home, and I've wrestled with it long enough that I've gotten pretty good at doing this kind of stuff.
Right.
And so there's that kind of, like, for example, this book over here, this is a handmade book. Typically what I do is, because the work is really large, it doesn't photograph well. It doesn't translate well digitally on a small screen. And however old I am, I've only just realized that I spend 99% of my time with my own drawings, no farther than this.
Yeah.
So my enjoyment of the drawing is often more at the micro level than the macro level, and the digital never captures that. So what I try to do with these is get up close.
Nice.
And present a close experience, and then it's an opportunity to play around with imagery, retelling the story, recontextualizing the story. So these two drawings have nothing to do with each other in terms of how they were made or how they were exhibited, but considering them now.
But you've created a new conversation.
Yes,
between
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. And handmade books are always a good idea at the time.
Well, you're doing what we called, we did something like this with some of our collaborative work, remixes.
Yeah.
Remixing
Yes.
your own.
Digital remixes.
Yeah.
We mass
Yeah.
publish them through Kindle.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But the handmade thing always seems like a good idea at the time. You always end up going, oh my God, I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah. So
But
time-consuming
I keep doing
and
that, and
everything.
then I mix back and forth between handmade and digitally published
Right,
books.
right,
And then,
right.
and then the last thing, and that's why we couldn't do it yesterday.
Yes,
I did
yeah.
a launch.
You had your book
Yeah,
about.
look at this, guys. Ready for this? Look.
Yes.
That's 43 years of doing everything the wrong way, so I could explain to emerging artists.
I want to look.
How to also not do it the right way.
It's a text.
Yes.
It's a text.
It's a textbook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
All
it
right.
talks about how to photograph artwork, how to present your
Oh,
portfolio,
wow.
how to write artist statements, how to sort things, contracts, copyright, insurance, all that
Brilliant,
stuff that
brilliant,
you
yeah.
do not get taught at school.
No, for sure.
And like I said,
Yes.
nobody taught me that either. I just learned it the hard way. So, sharing.
Do we have a quick second for a quick question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you one of those sort of classic questions that you would see like on an interview show.
Okay, go for
Because
it.
you teach.
Yes,
You
I have.
students, or have had students.
Yeah.
How would you teach yourself? You are the subject of your course. You have 1 minute to answer.
I would say, David, here's a piece of paper. Here's pencil, glue, red draw.
No, how would you teach if you were,
That's how I would
say it was
teach.
an art history class?
Oh,
and you
art-
are,
And you're
Art-
teaching about yourself.
Same as I would. Like I like art history,
Yeah.
and I'm intrigued in it, but it's completely self-interested. And if you're an artist, your relationship to art history is different than if you're just a tourist consumer. Your job is to steal shamelessly from art history. Look at what was done, why it was done. Is there anything useful that connects to your own creative process that can help you go forward? And that's I did teach art history, and I have had, and very flattering to me, people say, David, I've never thought of art history this way. You've actually made it real. And so that's what
That's great.
awesome.
When I was teaching, and the same with this book, nobody taught me how to teach, and it was as much an expression of me, and fortunately the students seemed to like it, and it was okay, guys, I'm a little bit farther down the road than you, but you're artists too. Nothing I say is authority, let's talk about this.
Dialogue.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I
Yes.
dodging your question?
No, not at all.
That's great.
It's
That's
an
great.
My favorite quote, and I had it on my office door, was from the back of the Globe and Mail when they used to have quotes like this. And it goes something like this. The little girl is talking to her mom, who is an art teacher, and said, Mom, what do you do all day? oh, I teach adults how to draw and paint. And the little girl says, what? You forget.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right? And so that's my whole approach.
That's right.
Is
Exactly.
play.
Play. It's all about play. Well, nobody plays quite like you do.
Well,
Dave.
thank you.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes. So thanks for chatting with us.
Oh, what a pleasure,
and
gentlemen.
giving